we were talking and we found out we had like one of our favorite movies in common, which is The Matrix. So I just knew this would be the perfect topic for us to have a conversation about. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good. And, this Matrix topic, I mean, it's so vast and so deep. Yeah, I mean, you could just analyze and just kind of just go down the rabbit hole, no pun intended, together for hours, if not days, just rediscovering or finding something new, and then because, we probably, because we have like interests, but we do have, certain differences. We might even see certain things that are different or perceived, this scene or this message or this subliminal piece that's different. And so being able to actually like have somebody that, is into it like that, you might after 20 years, right? Because it came out in 99. So 20 years, 21 years at this point, might throw something at me that I just didn't even know. I didn't catch. And so it'll be really, really good, really fun, really interesting to journey down the rabbit hole with you. And, can't wait.
Right on. I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. I want to give like a little story synopsis, and like I said, when I was looking for ones, like we discussed earlier, it was kind of hard to find a good one because most of them are trying not to tell what's going on. And also it's really hard to encompass everything about that movie in just a few words. A little breakdown for it, for the movie is basically, it says like, when a beautiful stranger leads a computer hacker named Neo into a forbidden underworld, he discovers the shocking truth. The life he knows is about to change. I think that's a fair assessment for the movie. This is going to be a deep discussion. So I can't imagine anybody not seeing this movie. But if you haven't seen this movie, it's up to you if you want to continue to listen or not, or to come back to it. But we're gonna start from the beginning and just go through these moments of this movie, the things that caught our eye and the things that we enjoyed, or some insight that we might have about it. I can't tell you what the Matrix is. You have to be shown. Yeah. Who knew that was so true? I didn't know how true that actually was, and in a good way. Let's start off. What do you? I guess we can start from the beginning. When the movie started, what was your impressions of the movie? I guess like when you first saw the trailer, and then also when you start watching the movie, what did you think like the initial part of the movie?
Well, first off, when that movie came out in '99, I was in the 5th grade. Like it was really just like an action movie.
Okay.
And it was just it was a spectacle to see. Just because we had never really seen like some of that stuff that had, like that they did, as far as like cinematography, as far as like special effects. So it was really like this kind of groundbreaking, like remarkable thing, even for a child. It's like, whoa, look at that. Like, I remember, it had like this impact on me because I used to, try to do that whole, some of the things in the movie, like run on walls and, fall and like crack my shoulder, or, the whole dodge bullets, lean back thing, and have my little sister trying to hold me up while, it was one of those things where like, it honestly made you see, like, it honestly made you want to be like these characters who weren't your typical superheroes that you kind of grew up, looking into. So at that age, of course, like I had the Batman, the Superman, the X-Men, X-Men animated series around that time, Batman animated, all those, the Batman Beyond, all those characters are the ones you're following. So then when you see this movie, now you want to be like them, that aren't just your run-of-the-mill, superheroes. Right. And so, I didn't really fully grasp what it was telling me when I was in the 5th grade. But the older I got and the more I watched the movie, the more it kind of just made sense that this could be real. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the piece of it. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Are we doing like a spoiler-free thing, or can we just like free talk?
Free talk, man. This is a discussion between people who love the movie. So
okay. So I think part of the film and the story, I should say, the story piece, if you really sit and think about it, what they did with this story, it honestly posed a question that you really can't answer. Is the Matrix real? That is a question that we cannot answer, because if it is real and we are in this computer-generated dream world, And the system at bay, of course, uses us for, this energy to keep the system going, right? This delicate balance of human keeping machine alive, machine keeping human alive. We wouldn't know because we're in this world, and so, I mean, just that paradox of, could this be real? Like, right. And you wouldn't know.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, when you being a little bit older than I was at the time, I mean, what was it for you, like, when you first kind of like really thought about what the story, I'm gonna ditch the movie part, just what that story, like, like, how did it resonate with you, and how did it make you feel, like, when you take a step back and look at the real world after looking at the story, like, what was that for you?
Man, that movie opened me up. And I think that 99, I had to be in my early 20s. Seeing that movie, it was funny. It's almost kind of like having the symptoms of something for a long time, and then you finding out what the problem you have is called. It's like having, like, I know that I feel not connected. I know that this feels like, doesn't feel quite right. You don't know why. So it was pretty neat to have something that kind of spoke to the feelings of a person, and then it kind of like, gives it a name, gives it something to kind of connect to, where you could kind of piece it together, like the terms like with deja vu and things like that, or the idea of the Matrix and things like that. Like, yeah, that makes almost more sense than the quote unquote real answers that we get for those things, like that makes more sense than the answers I'm getting just being here looking for the places that should have the answers for me. This movie made more sense. It seemed more believable in many ways. So seeing that and being of that age too, it was a trip, because I didn't have the youth part anymore, or being naive enough to let it slide. Like, I knew what it was speaking to. I knew what it was pointing to. I had enough time in there to just like, oh yeah, him going into that office and somebody's over you and trying to tell you what to do, and you just kind of looking off to the window. You're just looking out the window and just kind of like, your insides want to run, but logic and fear keeps you in place, So all that stuff was just very sad in a way, because you recognize it, but then also you feel better because at least you're not alone in feeling that way. Like, you're not crazy. Like, you got confirmation that is a thing, I think that did a lot with it. But then it was almost eye candy enough for the inner child of me to just dig all this special effects and all this other kind of stuff. And I really thought it was brilliant how subtle, especially the first movie, the first Matrix movie, how subtle it was, where it was almost a little bit more than normal. So, like, in the beginning when it stopped, when it started, and you had like, they go into the hotel and they find this person in there, find out her name is Trinity, and she's sitting there and she's in that room, and the cop is trying to arrest her, and she jumps up and gives a kick. Now, the kick was a little more than a normal kick, but the way it was shot with the quote unquote bullet time, it made it special. It was just it was normal, but it was a little off normal because of the way it was shot.
Right.
Then when she was getting out of there and she threw the chair and ran up the wall. Now, you got people who do parkour that can run up a wall, but she ran up the wall just a little bit longer than gravity should let you.
Right.
So you're watching it and you're thinking like, is that just style? Or did I see that wrong? Because it wasn't enough to make you know for sure something was going on. And then even when they were doing the rooftop run and she was trying to get away from the cops and the agents, and she jumps over the first part of the roof and she jumps over it, and then the cops jump over it, and then the quote unquote real cops jump over it, and it's fine. And then there's a bigger gap the second time. She jumps over it, the agent jump over it, and the cops are like, we can't do that. So I just love how it was just enough to let you know something extra was going on, it let you think it was fine and normal until it just went a little too far. And it's like, okay, that's where reality stops and something else is going on with this movie. What is this? What is this? I'm sorry, that's a long answer, but
no, I totally agree. I mean, thinking about it like that, I mean, like I said, as a kid, I saw it, I was like, whoa, this is superhero stuff right here. Yeah. And, not even thinking about it like that. Like, yeah, it was just a little bit past what the normal person would be able to perceive is doable.
Right.
Because of the gravity or whatever.
Right.
I think one of the things that as I got older that I really respect about the story and the movie was all of the little subtle symbolism or like the foreshadowing pieces that they would throw in. So like, for example, when when he was after the first Trinity scene, he was on his computer, and they were, I think it was either Trinity talking to him through the computer.
Yes.
And she's telling him, make sure you follow the white rabbit, and then knock, Neo. And then so the door opens, and he said that the gentleman at the door, he's like, you're my own personal savior, man. My own personal Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so you don't think like, you like, oh, okay, it's just whatever, right? And then he goes, he finds the thing in the Bible, but it's like a trick Bible for the little codes. And then she turns.
That's where he kept his little viruses that he would sell.
Yeah, right.
Contraband.
It was in this Bible, right? Or I think it was a Bible. It could have been a dictionary, but I thought it was a Bible. But then he follows her, right? Follows her to the club, and then, like later on when he's late for work, and then he's talking to his boss, and his boss is like, you believe you are special, that the rules don't apply to you, and all this kind of thing. And it's just the foreshadowing of who he is, and who he will be when he finally, like wakes up and stuff like that. This whole like deity, Jesus like person, you just think this guy's regular.
Right.
But all this foreshadowing in that he's not regular. And then as the story unfolds, you find out how really not regular he really is, and his abilities and all that stuff like that. So I love those little subtle pieces of the story, and just those little tidbits that they would drop. Buckle a seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
Right.
When Morpheus held out the blue pill and the red pill, it's like you take the blue pill, you wake up in your bed and you believe whatever you want, but you take the red pill, and I'll show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. And he takes the pill because he wants to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, right?
Right.
He's like, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. But little subtle stuff like that is, when he says that, you're thinking like, what does he mean by that?
Right.
Right? Like, all I'm offering is the truth. Like, so he takes the pill, and then, I guess when they're setting him up to, and still in the Matrix to get fired up, says that pill was a trace program to figure out and pinpoint your location. And we were like, what? Right. And then you find out like in the next scene, his location, like.
Yeah, and that's crazy. And what's funny is they kind of played with that tracker thing before that, even before the scene when he got to Morpheus, when the cops caught him, and they put that tracker in him, and it almost turns sci-fi because it's almost kind of like, I'm gonna make my phone call. I'm gonna call my lawyer, and then and the agent was like, "How you gonna call a lawyer when you can't speak?" And he's like, and he's looking around like, y'all gonna jump me in here? Y'all gonna beat me? Right. What do you mean? You gonna waterboard me? Like, what are you gonna do to me? And then you see his mouth get all gummed up, and he don't have a mouth. And then they hold him down, and they have like this look like a little mechanical bug thing tracer, and they put it in his belly button. And you like, what is going on with this dude? And it's a trip because you're like, is this real or is he dreaming? And it's a trip because after that happens, and he's like screaming, and they drop that little thing, and it goes into his stomach. He wakes up from a dream. So you're kind of like, okay, so he just had a nightmare and they just playing with his head. This can't be, okay, so they just messing with him. That didn't really happen until he ran to Trinity and the rest of the folks, and they had that debugger and pulled that thing out of him when he was awake. And it was just like, oh, that wasn't fake. That was real. But like you said, when that whole thing, when he was propositioning him with the red and blue pill, that was a trip. And I thought it was so brilliant with the reflection of the glasses, how it represented choice. Like they use a lot of things like monitors and reflections to be like, this is the choices that you have to do things. Like, you choose this or you choose that, and this to determine what the next set of choices is going to be. But like when he did say that, like you said, I didn't understand, like, so are they just gonna go give him this book and be like, hey, read this book or tell him the truth? I didn't know truth was going to be thrusted upon him because it turned into a whole different kind of movie after he took that pill. And I'm like, what am I watching? Like, wait, what is it? What? Like,
or, you know, and think about it, like the other piece where Apoc tells him, you know, we're still looking, and Trinity say he's going into cardiac arrest, and you're still not really understanding, like, what's happening here. But in the real world, they're forcing him to go into cardiac arrest so that he appears dead to the machine, so they flush him. And he's just like, really? Like, you know, like, what? Like, oh my God, this is dope. Because you just don't, when you're watching it for the first time, you're like, what? You know, like, what is happening? Like, it's two different worlds, you know? And so it was really good, really well done like that. And those beginning pieces of transitioning from what the Matrix looks like, right? Into what the real world looks like. And when he wakes up, you know, after he's been flushed, he wakes up and he's like, and Morpheus looks at him and says, welcome to the real world. He's like, wait a minute, what? And then you see it. And it's just like, wow.
It was hard. It was crazy because what we were technically watching was the real world. And then the real world was our sci-fi.
Right.
So it was kind of backwards. So they telling you to believe in sci-fi is real and this structure that we live in now, that's fake. And it was just like, it straight flipped it around. Cause I was looking at him like, where's his hair at? Why he look like, you know, like I thought he was in a nightmare, but that was him going to the office with the boss. That was the nightmare.
That was the nightmare. Or that was the nightmare.
That was the nightmare.
You know, when Morpheus put him in the construct program, and he was kind of trying to explain like what the Matrix is, you know, it's like you have to be shown, of course, right? And he tells him, you know, basically the Matrix is a prison for your mind.
That was
prison
so powerful.
That you cannot taste, you cannot see, taste, or touch.
Yeah.
Right?
Woo.
Whoa, man. I mean, it's like
that's a lot.
Because then they ask you, like, then that makes you think, well, how do you beat it? How do you escape? How do you know, right? You know what I'm saying? Or when Neo asked him, "Is this real?" It's like, well,
what is real?
You define real? Like, you know, you know, is it what you can see, what you can taste, what you can touch, what you can smell? Real is nothing but, you know, simulated nerve endings, you know, in your brain telling you what it is.
Right. Wow.
Man, you know, and then he tells him, he's like, "This is what you think is real," and shows him his time. What he had perceived was his time, right? You know, with the skyscrapers and the buses and technology, you know, on the cusp of like overexpanding all this stuff. And then he tells him, welcome to the desert of the real. And you see this like desolate, like post-apocalyptic guy, like, like, wait a minute. But like you said, you know, the sci-fi is the real. And we were given, and we're in this prison of the fate that we think is real, which brings me back to that first question. Like, how do we actually know? That we aren't in now.
You kind of don't know until that door is open, because it was just interesting too, how he saw that Valley of the Rip. That was a trip. And the fact that he was assuming that maybe that they are farther along in the future than they actually think they are, you know? It's just crazy, the process of everything, and how the ones that are rejected, they're used as food to feed the others and all that. Just the whole cycle of the thing, you know? And like he was pretty much plugged in, and how he broke it down to saying like we're basically a battery, because we scorched the earth to stop the solar power. So they figured out another way to get power was to breed people. You know?
He's like, it's ironic, you know, because throughout the course of history, humans have become dependent upon machines to make life easier, to live upon. I mean, think about it, even now, ventilators and all these like extra machines that keep people alive.
Pacemakers.
Pacemakers, right?
All kind of monitors and stuff.
So then it's ironic that after we mess up the earth to try to stop them, they depend on us now to keep them going, because they can't use the sun anymore.
Right.
You know, it was just like, oh my goodness, like the story. It's so crazy because it just makes you think like this would be the perfect cover up.
Yes,
like this would be it. It would be a perfect cover up, and you just wouldn't know, And then like you hear here's the other piece. So venturing out, rolling with the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, so he was the allegory piece of him being this Jesus character, right?
Right.
And think about like when you hear about certain pieces, especially in like biblical accounts, where you had like Moses who was like 200 years old, or you had Jesus that walked on water, was raised again. You had all these like these people in these biblical times that did these things that, of course, they don't happen now that we know of.
Yeah.
They don't happen now, right? And of course, you have folks who think, no, that can't be real,
right.
because that doesn't happen now,
right?
And so it's almost like if it was real, the system telling us this cannot be, you can't do these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't stray too far from the programming, right? Don't, because you'll hurt yourself, or it's not real, or you can't do this. So I think the movie, just like what his boss was telling him, you think you're special,
right? and that's how the world is. That's how society is. It's to beat you down just to keep you down. It's like, so you won't know who you are, so you can't be who you're supposed to be. It's almost a damn plague that everybody's almost in the wrong place. Somebody might be a singer and they're a doctor, and somebody that should be a doctor is probably a garbage man. It's just so crazy, and the fact that we're willing to accept what we're being told about ourselves and what we're being dealt to us. It's just like, but if you don't have a sense of self, then everything that you get, you feel is for you.
Yeah.
You don't know who you are to know that that's not for me.
Yeah.
It was just so much truth in it, but
no, and so venturing on to this other piece that impacted me like next level. There was a scene where Morpheus is he's still trying to explain the Matrix to Neo, and he's walking. I don't know if you remember, he's walking down that sidewalk, and so everybody. It was so funny the way they did that. So everybody's walking around Morpheus, of course, but everybody's like bumping into Neo, like. He doesn't have that confidence yet, right? So it's like almost like a virus. It was like in the scene, them showing how the Matrix will do you, because he's explaining it. The Matrix is a system, Neil. In that system, you see teachers, carpenters, mailmen, firefighters, right? And he's like, but you have to understand, any given point, these people are here to protect the system, and they'll die for the system. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, when they were attacking him, it's like what happens with a virus.
Yeah.
If you're the virus, right? If you think about it, if you're the virus, or if the system sees you, or your immune system sees you as a virus, they're gonna attack you.
Right.
They're not gonna make it easy for you. So when they were bumping into him, I love that piece. But then when he tells them, he's like I said, the system, anybody there they'll protect the system, and they'll die doing it. And if you look at like the way things are now, you have people like that in the real world right now. Right. Who will die to protect the way it is. This whole Make America Great Again BS, all that kind of stuff. People will die to protect the system and the way it has been, because they don't want to change. Right. You know what I'm saying? And if you think about it, like just the way like this story had played it out, it was just, it's so much. I was telling people, I tell people when I watch this movie, like this movie, you can attribute so much to this story, because it goes beyond just like the sci-fi piece.
Yes.
Anything you have that's set in place that the majority of people love and depend on like that, they're going to fight to keep it established.
Right.
And if you're like this Malcolm X, this Martin Luther King, this person that's coming to disrupt the status quo, just like Neo would be, they're going to try to take you out, just like they did him. So, that part impacted me a lot too.
Yeah, I like that part too. And it's funny because the way I took it too with that, and it was a very telling scene too. But what kind of got me when Morpheus said that any potential person in there could be an agent. I thought that was very powerful. Like anybody, so don't take it for granted that you're okay and everybody is just harmless around you. Anybody there is potential agent.
Yeah. What he say? He says, in the system, they are everyone.
Yeah.
They are no one.
They're no one. Yes. 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 Systematic. Systematic. Yeah. And there's plenty of things that are systematic that we deal with in this world that, you know, you think you're fine until you get pulled over. You think it's fine until you try to move into this neighborhood. You think you're fine until you try to get this loan. You think you're fine until you try to get this job.
Right.
You think you're fine.
Until you're not.
Until
you're not.
Until you're not.
Right.
Hey, this is Jay, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. I just want to let you know that this conversation is part of a larger conversation that continues on the next episode. Thanks for listening.